Okay.
Okay, so this should be going live soon. Greg, if you share your content, let me stop sharing mine. And if you share yours, all right, cool. It should be going now. The first time's the hardest. Let me verify.
Can people hear us?
We're learning.
Sorry, everyone.
Oh, awesome. We are live.
Okay, I guess we are live. So let's start, right? So welcome everyone to our first virtual combined meetup with North Boston Azure and Boston Azure user groups. And finally, we fixed our issues. So hopefully it will go smooth from now on. You can post your questions and I will try to moderate it. And Greg, our speaker today, I'll introduce him in a minute. So I'll pass the questions to him and then he'll be making some pauses during his talk and he'll be answering questions. You can also post your questions on Slack even after the session. So Greg will answer them later if you want him to answer them. And so let me actually introduce our first speaker for this format. It is Gregor Suttie, all the way from Glasgow. That is super exciting. Now we can have international speakers for our meetups. So Greg, he is an Azure MVP. He is really active in Azure community. He's doing lots of awesome things and he can tell you more about himself. So I'll pass it to Greg.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everyone. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I think it was probably my fault. Let's not worry about that. It's amazing what you can fix when you turn it off and turn it back on again. So super excited to be here, super excited to be talking to you. So yeah, my name's Gregor Suttie, also known as Azure Greg, and welcome to my session on Supercharge your Azure learning. So just a wee bit, before we go any further, I'm just going to jump in here with a brief introduction to myself. So I have 20 plus years experience mainly as a VB6 developer to begin with, and then moving on to .NET. So I've been a developer for 24 years, I think it is. As you can see in the bottom right hand corner, there's a little map there of the UK, and the star is next to where I live. So I live just to the east of Glasgow. So you'll recognise the Scottish accent. So I'm currently head of development for Sword IT in Glasgow. So I am in charge of 17 developers all throughout the UK, and we work on all sorts of different types of projects, public sector, private sector, all different types of .NET, mainly .NET and Azure projects. Also co-organised the Glasgow Azure user group along with Sarah Lean, who organised it, and I just kind of help out. So I kind of try and help it get speakers to come along and speak at the event. I run the Azure Global Bootcamp, so this is our 4th year this year. So I run the Glasgow edition of that, and obviously this year it's going to be online. So looking for speakers, but so we're always looking for speakers from all around the world just to try and grow the Azure community. Personal blog is at gregorsuttie.com. Mainly blog on things like Azure, Azure DevOps, .NET, that kind of thing. In August last year, I became an MVP in Azure, and I tend to help organise Azure community events when possible. So I'm quite committed to the Azure community. So that's our little logo for the Glasgow Azure user group there, and that's a picture of me. So that's a little introduction to me. So the agenda for my talk today is I'm going to talk about a couple of things. So I'm going to start off with my journey. I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey and how I learned a huge subject area like Azure from scratch. Next, I'll cover some exam information, so how to get started with the Azure exams, where to find useful links and info on the Azure exams. Then I'll move on and look at learning resources. So in the last two and a half to 3 years of learning Azure, I've gathered a lot of learning material, some good stuff, and I'll cover that later on, and I'll go in with some demos of that stuff. So I'll show you the links, talk about the links, and then I'll show you the learning resources that I've picked up as I go. If there's one thing I'm good at finding resources. So if you're studying the Azure exams, then hopefully some of this content will be useful to you. And then to round off, I'll talk about the takeaways from this session, and then we'll open up to questions as we go. So if you have questions, don't worry, I'll stop kind of a couple of times throughout this session. And then we'll finish with questions as well. So my journey, I'm going to split this into three. So all journeys have to start somewhere. So in November 2017, I had literally zero Azure knowledge. I was working for JP Morgan, the big bank in the Glasgow office. Started wanting to look at new things. I was kind of working in what you would call a feature factory. So I was working on one big project over 3 years, and I was kind of doing 2-week sprints and just working on the same thing day in, day out. And it was kind of getting boring, kind of doing the .NET, same sort of thing, week in, week out, and just wanted to start looking at something different. So I thought, being a kind of Microsoft fanboy, I would start having a look at the cloud and kind of get interested in Azure. Next, I'm going to talk about failure, which is not something many people talk about, but it's also an important part of learning and what you can learn from failure. And I certainly have learned a few things from doing the Azure exams and kind of tackling it from the start, probably not the best way. So I'll cover that. And then I'm going to cover where I am today in my journey, just to give you some context around my journey on learning Azure, and hopefully some of it will resonate with you, with the people on the call today. So let's dive in the first part of my talk, my journey. So starting out, so it was November 2017. As I said, I was on one kind of big project. I wanted to try and learn some cloud development, but internally at JP Morgan, they were kind of building their own internal cloud, and they were kind of a Java place. They weren't really doing too much .NET. They weren't really doing any Azure. And that kind of my Microsoft background, I wanted to start learning Azure. So I started trying to learn Azure in my spare time. And as you can probably understand, trying to learn something like Azure is very, very daunting. So yeah, it's a very large subject area to learn. But when I put my mind to something, I go all in. I kind of decide that I'm going to go and do that. And I started spending 2 hours a night, every night, to try and learn the basics of Azure. And I'll talk about how you can get started as well later on, and the best place to start. So the one thing I was going to talk about failure, which is something you might not hear much in this day and age, but I kind of think it's an important thing because you can learn from your failures. So I studied like crazy for a long time, probably 3 or 4 months. And one day when I was on Twitter, I saw that they had started talking about new Azure exams, and that kind of piqued my interest. And then I saw a blog post talking about some new Azure exams coming out. So I signed up for the 2 beta exams back then, which was the Azure Administrator exams. I think this was in March, maybe 2018. So I've been learning for a couple of months, just 2 hours a night, which is quite a lot. But I started looking at the AZ100 back in the day, which was the Microsoft Azure Infrastructure and Deployment exam. And then I was also looking at the AZ101. Now, the problem I had was the beta exams came out, and I had 2 weeks to study for them. So I kind of had to kind of knuckle down and look at it. And if you know me, I don't do things by half. I kind of like to jump right in. So I kind of took 2 exams within 2 weeks, with 2 weeks prep. So I basically said to myself, let's just go and give it a shot. So that's kind of that. And to start off with, I failed the very first Azure exam I'd ever taken. So I hadn't done any Microsoft exams for maybe 4 or 5 years since the MCSD days. So that's a new learning experience. I failed that exam by about 4 or 5 marks, so it wasn't too bad. So that was, I think that was the 3rd week in March. And then I failed the second Azure exam, which was like 2 weeks later. So I was 2 down and 2 failures. So that wasn't great. When I got the results of these 2 exams, I did really realised that I had just narrowly failed. So the point of me talking about failure is what did I learn from failure doing these exams? And to be honest, I kind of put 4 or 5 things down here. So poor preparation. I didn't really prepare for the exam. I kind of was reading blog posts and kind of looking at stuff. I wasn't really doing hands-on. So I'd also say I had poor planning. I kind of rushed into the exams head first. I thought, oh, Azure beta exams, I'll have a shot at them. And I also didn't study the right material. I was kind of reading Microsoft Doc articles and reading blog posts, and the lessons that I learned from this is I wasn't doing hands-on learning. I was reading books and stuff like that and not actually opening up the kind of Azure portal and building things. So that's kind of where I went wrong. And the other reason why I wanted to mention failure was being a developer. These 2 exams were kind of infrastructure and networking type things, administration, which I had no really experience in. So probably picking those 2 exams to start off with wasn't great. But the one thing I did learn was I had came from no Azure knowledge, and I was kind of starting to almost pass these exams, which was interesting. It meant that what I was learning was starting to sink in. So that was good. But basically what I'm saying, I needed to learn hands-on learning and take it all in and repeat that practice. So kind of build a network, build virtual machines, and kind of do it hands-on and kind of redo the process. So I'm a kind of visual person, and seeing things rather than just reading about things was kind of where I went wrong. So that's kind of my learning from failure. And since then, I think I've sat 11 exams in total, and I've also failed. I failed the Azure DevOps exam twice for pretty much doing the same thing again, jumping in too early just because there was an Azure beta exam out and it was kind of a quarter of the price. So one thing I would say is don't jump into the exams too quickly. I'll cover some tips and some later on just to kind of talk about the things that you should do rather than the things you shouldn't do. But that's kind of that. And today, let's talk about where I am today. So moving on in my journey, the main reason I want to convey that is how you can go on your own journey and learn something like Azure. I don't recommend you try and learn all of Azure because it's obviously such a large topic. So today I am an Azure MVP. So that's pretty cool. I was an Azure MVP within 2 years of not knowing any Azure, which I'm quite proud of. I think the main reason for becoming an Azure MVP was basically giving back to the community. So one of the things that I was constantly doing was sitting the exams, taking notes, filling up my OneNote, reading blog posts, doing hands-on learning, and then looking at the exam pages and looking at the content that they were going to ask you on, and coming up with study guides. So I think the study guides were really quite popular. I think that was kind of looking at my blog stats, the study guides were the most popular blog posts by quite a bit. So I was giving back to people, which felt good. People would ping me and say, thanks for your study tips and kind of study guides, passed my exam. So that was kind of cool. And that was quite nice. And the one thing I always learned from a long time ago in my career was always think of the person coming behind you. So they might be on a similar journey. So people on the call might be on a similar journey. And if you share what you learn, then maybe just one day you'll be able to help that person on their journey, which is always a good thing, I think. The good news is, after failing the initial 2 exams, I've now passed 9 exams. So, so I've learned my kind of the things not to do, and although the exams are a little bit out of date. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was part of this journey. People were seeing that I was sitting the exams and kind of interested that I had no Azure knowledge, and now I was kind of passing these exams. And being on part of the community, I was getting people coming up to me and saying, would you like to be a technical author? Would you like to write books on the exams and all that kind of stuff? And that was quite cool. So I ended up being a technical author on a published Azure book on Azure DevOps. So that was really cool. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, as part of that, you kind of get opportunities, and I've been asked to speak at conferences. I'm kind of doing this talk today, so that's kind of another cool thing. Just giving back to the community, I think, is quite important. So that's kind of where I am as of today. So the next thing I wanted to talk about were my goals. So for me, goals are very important. I set goals for myself every 3 months, kind of stretch goals, not something simple, things that I think would be really cool to have and do, but aren't going to be straightforward. So these are the long-term goals I had when I started learning Azure. So the first one was I wanted to pass an Azure exam. Then the next thing was to pass the Azure Architect exam. So the Architect exams, excuse me, are probably the most difficult because they cover all of Azure. So from having no Azure knowledge to passing that exam, and I think just under 2 years, was quite proud of myself for that. And speaking of conferences, obviously was one of my goals as well. I always looked up to people who spoke at conferences and thought, yeah, that's kind of cool. I'd really like to kind of do that. I actually had a fourth goal in the back of my head, but I didn't want to put it on the slides, as quickly learned that becoming an MVP was not something that should be a goal. Becoming an MVP is a byproduct of giving back to the community. So one of my biggest goals was becoming an MVP. And I'll admit that I wrote the letters MVP and pinned them on the wall above my monitor at home. And when I struggled for motivation, kind of doing the deepest, darkest, doing 2 hours a night every night, this would remind me of one of my goals. So yeah, that was kind of motivation, and I can always do that now. I have a calendar above a monitor I'm looking at right now, and I've kind of circled all the things I want to do and when. So that's another good. It's always good to have goals. I'd recommend that people have goals, because if you don't, it's quite easy to float around and really not get where you want to be, especially with Azure. If you're starting to learn Azure or you're kind of thinking about the exams, one of the best things about sitting the exams for me was it gives you focus and it fills in gaps in your learning. So if I'm not a kind of network person, but I kind of learned a lot about Azure networking, which was something I wouldn't have went out of my way to do. But in order to kind of sit these exams and pass these exams, I had to learn that. So that's kind of why I always think the Azure exams are quite an important part for learning. It gives you kind of a goal to try and pass these exams. So that's kind of my goal as well. So I've got time for some questions if you wanted. Does anyone get any questions at this moment?
So I can see only. Oh, it's weird. I can hear myself. So I can see only one question right now. So Harish was asking, I'm preparing for AZ 104. Okay. I was preparing for AZ 103. I would like some guidance as I'm reading the exam reference book and going through videos on O'Reilly. My goal is to become an Azure architect and an Azure MVP. So it would be great if you can share the best path towards achieving that. Yep.
So if you're studying for the Azure AZ 103, I actually recommend you just go for the 104. And there is a PDF document online. If you look at the exam for AZ 104, that will show you the differences between AZ 103 and AZ 104. There's also a thing from there's a guy called Tim Warner and Mike Pfeiffer, and they're doing an online course on cloud skills. And basically, I think it's been reduced to $97, but it's 3 days of training for that actual exam. And I've done some of their training before, and I would highly recommend you sign up to that. It's kind of at the end of this month, and it's 3 days of going through courses and learning. And they can't guarantee you'll pass, but I think from previous courses and people sitting exams, the pass rate from that is really high. With regards to being an Azure MVP or an MVP in general, there's kind of no real fast and hard way of doing it. You just really need to give back to the community as much as you can. Some of the examples of stuff that I do is I organise events. I can show you some things maybe later on in the talk. Organise events for the community. I take part in events. I help run the user group, which is a big thing. And we've kind of started something that I don't really want to talk about right now, but I'll show you later on. I kind of trying to grow the Azure community. So that's kind of good. And if you want to do the architect exams, start off small. Start off with the exam that suits you. I would actually recommend you start off with the AZ 900. Now, a lot of people look at that and think, well, that's a bit basic. But it's a really good exam to start with if you've never done them before, because it's actually some tricky questions in there, and you get used to the test, the way of just getting in the mindset of doing an exam, and then maybe do the AZ 104. So yeah, I would suggest that. Anything else? Any other questions, or do you want me to continue?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions here. So let's Okay, let me ask that one. For prepping for Azure, I'm from an IT pro background, though moving to Azure Cloud. So wanted to get an idea of where I need to focus on.
So yeah, I mean, this is kind of how I started. I kind of, what I should have done is I'm a developer, so I should have looked at the developer exams to begin with. And in hindsight, I'll repeat it. I would start with the fundamentals exam. So have a look at the fundamentals exam, and you'll kind of get a good idea of Azure. And then if you're an IT ops person, then you might want to look at something like the AZ-104, the IT administrator exam. Look up, what I would suggest is you look up the exam information and find the exam that suits you best. And I can show you some resources for that later on. So you can actually tie your skills to what exam you want to look at. I always go on about the exams, but I really do think they're a good way to fill in gaps and learn things because they cover quite a lot of stuff, which is good and bad, but you will learn. So I always, yeah, I think I'll show you some resources later that will probably help with that question. Anything else?
Awesome, thank you, Greg. Another question from Jim. I've taken a couple Azure exams in the US and found the test itself to be terrible and nearly unpassable, in my opinion. What was your experience in Scotland? I wonder if the same company prepares your exams.
Yeah, so yeah, I need to watch what I'm saying here, but I don't think the exams are that I know I contradict myself here, but the exams are run by Pearson VUE, and I've had some difficulties doing them. One thing I would say is if you're doing the exams, I would suggest, obviously you can't do them now, but if things hadn't been different, then I would suggest do your first one at a test centre. I just think it's just more comfortable to do that, and then do them online. You can do them proctored in the house. But I always recommend you do your first one in a test centre. I'm not entirely sure why I recommend that, but it's just a gut feeling that I have. But yeah, so the one good thing I would say is the labs, due to coronavirus, the labs are not in play at the minute. So if you are thinking about sitting an exam, there aren't any labs, which makes it a little bit easier. I've sat 2 exams with labs, and to be honest, the labs didn't even load in the first exam. I sat I think it was the architecture exam, and the labs didn't load at all. And then I sat another exam where the whole thing crashed. So yeah, there's lots of reports of bad experiences. But due to coronavirus and the usage of Azure, they've kind of removed all of the labs at the minute. So I would suggest you wire in and get on with exams, because the labs not being there are probably a benefit to people, because they're not great. It's not a great experience. Not for me anyway. Anything else, or crack on?
Yes, one more question. I would like to take DP200 Azure Data Engineer. Where do I start?
So it depends if it's your first exam or not, but the best place, in fact, I'll show you resources on where to find. There's some really good learning resources and things like test questions, and gives you an idea of what to expect. Probably best to wait till I show you some of these resources rather than kind of cover them just now. That's okay. I'm actually going to talk about Azure exams next.
So I think we'll just pause with questions right now, and I'll ask you more later.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's no problem. Okay, so Azure exams. Let's talk about the Azure exams. So yeah, due to the pandemic, one thing I did want to say was the labs are no longer, which is good, I think, to be honest. So let's talk about a little bit more. So I'll talk about some of the questions that people ask me. So people always ask me, what's the best way to take the exams, online or go to a test centre? I always suggest first go to a test centre and then do them from home. Obviously now you have to do them from home. But there's many Azure exams coming out all the time. There's new ones popping up. There's new betas coming up. So yeah, definitely do the exams if you can. So another question is, how much do the exams normally cost? So normally they're about 165 each, unless you have a voucher. Some people can get vouchers, or if you're sitting a beta exam. Now, beta exams are slightly different. There are more questions in the beta exam, but they're about a quarter of the price. And I think don't take this the wrong way, but I think beta exams are actually slightly easier. A lot of people seem to pass the beta exams. Now, the beta exams so that Microsoft can kind of look at the larger number of questions you get asked, excuse me, and work out what's a good question and what's not a good question based on feedback. I also get asked is where can you book the exams? So basically just to browse to the exam page and register from there, and it's fairly straightforward. The one thing I would call out is if you're doing them at home now, you kind of need to sign in a little bit early, because you're asked to take photographs of your ID on your phone, and you're asked to take photographs of your room that you're in. They used to sometimes come on the video and do that, but it's now all on mobile. So if your exam, say, started at 1 in the afternoon, don't join 15 minutes early. Join half an hour early just so you're there, and have your ID handy, because you might need to take a photo of that and definitely pictures of the room. Another tip is once you're doing an exam on at home, you need to stay within the camera, because there's actually some software that will run, and if your face moves out of that picture, face detection will crop up, and you can actually fail the exam if you do things like bend down to pick up like your mouse or something like that, or if you cover your mouth as well, you can fail. So just be careful when you're doing the exams at home. But this link on this page, you can see that's basically just a link to the kind of main exams. So there's fundamental exams, there's associate exams, and there's expert exams. So I always suggest start with fundamental exams and then the associate and expert. That's kind of the route you're supposed to do. You don't have to take them in that order. You could start with like the associate and then go back and do fundamentals. Actually, the last exam I did was fundamentals. I didn't really think it was worthwhile doing, and then I spoke to some people and they were saying that the content's actually quite good, so I kind of went back and did that, which was good. I did that at Ignite, which was quite nice. And then if we move on a little bit, so a couple of links here that I wanted to call out. So the actual official blog for the exams is that link there. And if you're on Twitter, there's a person called Liberty Munson, so that's a good person to follow. If you sit beta exams, that person there calls out when the results are announced, and they kind of blog about the new beta exams coming up. So that's always an account to keep an eye out. There's also a really good website called Build59. It used to be buildazure.com, but I had to rename it. And the link in there, I'll talk about in a minute. But the certifications area of that website is really good. And probably one of my favourite exam links is this official study guide. So Microsoft have actually got this study guide where you click on that link and just put in AZ-201, for example, and it'll show you the official study guides that Microsoft have got, and I'll show you that in a wee minute. But that's actually not a very well-known link, and it's the first link that I send to people who are sitting new exams. And another thing I put together was on GitHub. I have an Azure Resources GitHub, which I'll show you later as well. And I've put in as many folders as I can for like AZ-103, 200, 300, 400, 500, 900. So I've got some study guides that I kind of wrote, and because it's on GitHub, anyone can contribute to. So one or two of my friends have kind of added theirs in there. So I'll show you some of that as well, which is pretty cool. Okay, and let's move on. So where do you start? So if you're starting to learn Azure and you're kind of looking for resources, I kind of like to call these resources out. So Microsoft Learn, no matter what level you're at, if you're a beginner, intermediate, or an expert, Microsoft Learn is just fantastic. They're adding new content all the time. You can learn the fundamentals of Azure, you can learn pretty much everything. And some of these website links have labs that you can spin up and kind of work on. Now, I don't know if they're going to work just now because of the coronavirus, but they might do. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't actually tried them for a wee while. And then there's AzureOverview.com, which is, as it suggests, an overview of Azure. So you find a resource that you're looking at. So say you don't know anything about Service Bus, for example, you search for Service Bus, and it will give you some links to the official documentation. So that's quite handy, and it's kind of, as it says, an overview of Azure. One of the best places is obviously the Azure Docs. So the official Azure documentation from docs.microsoft.com can't really beat it. I'm on that page quite regularly, to be honest. And the last one I wanted to call out was the Cloud Adoption Framework. So if you're in a company and you're thinking about moving towards Azure and adopting the cloud, this website is absolutely brilliant. I can show you it in a wee minute, but that will discuss how you go about moving to the cloud and think about things like governance, so that you have naming conventions and resources, and you just don't start spinning up stuff that's going to cost you lots of money and you're going to kind of regret it. But there's lots of brilliant resources in there. So that's kind of the best resources for when you're starting to learn Azure. Now, if I move on, so if you're kind of familiar with Azure, but you're not an Azure expert, these are kind of some other good resources. There's a really good site called Azure Citadel. I will go through all these and I'll show you them in a little minute. AzureCitadel.com is not really well known. That's put together by the community, and it's kind of links to all sorts of things like networking, using Packer and Ansible, and all sorts of cool stuff you can search in there. Next, we have AzureCharts.com. Azure Charts is a phenomenal website. It's written by a guy who works for Microsoft, and I'm going to show you that as well because there's so many cool things in there. You can find out about any Azure service. You can find out about things like SLA, which resource is available in which country, all sorts of really cool information. There's even a quiz in there. If you're doing a kind of user group thing and you want a quiz at the end of it, you could kind of work on that. The next one's Azure Tips and Tricks, written by Michael Crump. So he has some Azure tips and tricks that cover a variety of things, networking, or basically everything within Azure. And I think that is actually on GitHub. So that's open for people to commit to and kind of do pull requests. That covers all of Azure, and I think he's up to like 290 tips at this moment in time. And if you look at his screen where it says offline, he's actually now on Twitch as well, which is pretty cool. And the last resource on here is Azure Quick Start templates. So if you're wanting an ARM template, so if you want a template that will help you spin up something that someone else has created, or you want to do something like create a VM and you're not sure how to, you can go in here and basically search, just type in Azure VM and it will come up with samples and templates of how to go about doing that. So that's pretty cool as well. So that's kind of information if you're in the middle of the journey. So the next one is experienced in Azure. The first one I'm going to talk about is AzureChecklist.com. So if you are pretty experienced in Azure and you're about to move to production, let's say, it's kind of like a checklist for, say you're doing Azure functions and you're just about to put them live in production. You can go in there and it gives you a checklist of all the things you might have not thought about and check off just to make sure that you've thought about security, you've thought about authorization and things like that. And it's really cool. It's a community website as well. Next one is Azure Architecture Center. This is where you find reference architecture, example workloads, and cloud best practices, and a ton more. So the cloud best practices is really good. So if you're doing something like SQL Server and you want to know how to set up replication, let's just say, you go in there and you can look it up, and it'll give you all sorts of background information and kind of reference architecture on how you want to go about it. That's pretty good if you're an Azure architect. That's a very good resource. The third one is Azure DevOps Demo Generator, sorry. So if you're doing Azure DevOps or you're wanting to learn how to use Azure DevOps, in there there's labs, there's all sorts of things. I'll show you that as well. You can learn Ansible, you can learn how to create build pipelines, release pipelines, all sorts of really cool stuff in there. And the last one is Scott Hanselman's Azure Friday. So every Friday they release 2 or 3 videos every week of things that he has found talking to people who work with Azure. So that's some pretty cool stuff in there. Things like how to improve performance in your websites, stuff like that. So that's kind of if you're experienced in Azure. I will show you a lot of these, don't worry. I know I'm talking really quickly, but we'll do a wee demo of most of these. Okay, so let's talk about paid training. So all those resources are free. These ones are not free. So these are the training ones that I've come across in the past. Skylines Academy, really, really good. They've got a lot of really good courses, things like the fundamentals. They've got some Office 365 training come out recently. Really, really good. Pluralsight, I've used Pluralsight for a long time. The learning paths in there are excellent. I haven't really used cloudguru.com, to be honest. I used Udemy back in the day with Scott. Scott's training is fantastic in there. And one thing that's really good, if you feel that you're ready to sit an exam and you're kind of looking for some questions that might be kind of similar to the exams, but they're not cheat sheets in any shape or form, they're just kind of test questions. It's whizlabs.com. I've used them a couple of times. And if they ask you a question and you get the answer wrong, then it'll give you a link to documentation on the website, and you can go and read about it. So that's really good. And I always mention Measure Up just because it's kind of Microsoft kind of ping you there from when you're signing up for exams. I don't really use MeasureUp.com anymore, to be honest. I used to use it to begin with, but I think the other resources are probably a little bit better. Excuse me. Okay, and then so let's talk about community resources. So there's 1 or 2 community resources out there that are fantastic. There's a lot of Azure blogs that people have written, blogs covering Azure things. There's lots of really good YouTube channels. Microsoft have got a fantastic YouTube channel. There's user groups like this where you can speak to people and ask questions, and virtual conferences now. There's lots of them online. So if you're on Twitter, you can keep an eye out for things like that. There's some really good GitHub resources. There's some GitHub resources for that I'll show you in a wee minute. I've put one together which covers all of my Azure learning. And the one thing I wanted to call out was a thing called Cloud Family. So myself and a couple of other people have started a new Azure community online called Cloud Family. The reason why it's called Cloud Family is we didn't want to put Azure in the name because that build Azure.com had to get renamed to Build 5.9, so we called it Cloud Family. But that's got a Slack channel, it's got a website, and I'll show you all that in a minute. Yeah, basically the community resources out there are brilliant. So enough of that talk. Does anyone have any questions before I demo this stuff, or do you want me just to keep going?
Yeah. We still have a couple of questions.
Cool.
Okay. I can hear myself for some reason. Okay. Yeah, it's better. Okay, the question. Someone was also going through similar path as you did, Greg, and he has been using Linux Academy and was passing the practice exams with 100%. So what do you suggest to do to prepare to take it again? Also, do you think I could take it as soon as possible or wait a couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I've never really used Linux Academy. I've heard good things about it. I'm not sure why I've not. It's just not something that I've come across. But if you're doing the exams and you're kind of not doing the same questions over and over again, so one of the things I've used MeasureUp.com to begin with, and I was kind of sitting the same questions and getting obviously better scores because I knew the answers. If you're doing that, then I would maybe look at something else. But if you've got different questions each time with different answers, then and you're getting 100%, or I would actually recommend if you're getting over 80%, then go for it. I would just take the exam. And if you do fail the exam, again, don't worry about it. You can see where you get a report at the end of it, where you did well and where you didn't do so well. So you'll be able to gauge your learning and figure out what you need to learn the next time. But I would say definitely go for it. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question here. What do you suggest for an Azure Cloud DevOps? As I'm currently working as a DevOps engineer, but not on Azure, I think.
So on Azure, the AZ400 is the DevOps exam. Is that kind of what you're asking? Do you want to look into that? I mean, I can talk about that. I mean, yeah. So the Azure DevOps exam is an interesting exam because it's not just Azure DevOps, the product. It's more a DevOps in general. So it talks about things like moving from GitHub to Azure DevOps, moving off of TFS, upgrading TFS. There's a lot of questions about things like Jenkins. So it's not just Azure DevOps, which might come as a surprise to a lot of people. But yeah, if you look at the exam study material, you'll get an interesting idea. But I actually failed that exam twice because I didn't know anything about TFS and I didn't know much about Jenkins. I actually, again, wasn't doing any hands-on things with Jenkins, so I actually spun up a VM with Jenkins on it, and that's the best way to learn for me. So, yeah, I mean, if you're a DevOps person, definitely look into some of the content, but I'll show you in a wee minute because it's an interesting exam. It's a little bit some of the questions are not what I was expecting, I must admit.
Okay, awesome. One more general question. Will this presentation be shared?
Yes. So what I'll do is I'll put my slides and all my links and stuff onto my GitHub, and I'll share it there. So yes, I'll show you where I'll put that as well, so I can show you the link as well. So yeah, all available at the end of it.
That's awesome. Thank you. I think we don't have any more questions right now.
Okay, cool. Like, let me show you some of these resources. It's all good and well, me saying they're all brilliant resources, but let me show you these. So let's just, let's see if this works. Okay, so I have split these into collections. So if I talk about the Azure exams first, so let's have a look at this Twitter account. This is the one I was talking about, Liberty Munson. So this is quite a good resource. This is the person who writes this blog. So this is the actual official Microsoft blog. And here's an example of what I was talking about. So this person here is very good to follow, because if you're doing beta exams or want to know when an exam's coming out, then they tweet quite a lot about these kind of things. So it's mostly tweets about the Azure resources. So that's a good one. Now, one of the best websites for learning is for the exams is Build59. This website is fantastic, I must admit. Now they've got a whole bit about why you want to get certified, where to go to get started, popular training courses, things like exam study guides for all the different exams. So definitely check this out if you want to do the AI engineering or the developer associate. Really good stuff on here. There's actually also a study guide in here where you can put in the study guide notes and you can score yourself as you're going, just to keep an eye on how you're getting on. I'll try and find that in a little second. So this website's really good, build59s.com. Used to be buildazure.com. It's also a really good blog, but I just like the certifications. Let me see if I can. Here it is here, free assessment tool. So it's kind of like an Excel spreadsheet, and you can download a couple of them already. Here they are here. And if I just show you the screen again, it kind of gives you the objectives by area, and you can kind of fill in your confidence level on each area. Kind of just keep an overview of how your learning's going, which I think is really cool. It's pretty straightforward, but it's quite nice that they've done that. And that's all kind of open source, so you can go in there and download the AZ103 or the 104 and fill out the areas that you're confident with or you're not confident with, and then go and fill it in once you are confident, and then you'll know kind of that you're ready to take the exam. So I think that's a really good resource. Other good resources are, so this is my favourite link for finding exam information. So this is basically the Microsoft training, and you come in here and it automatically ticks exam, and then you just put in EZ, let's go for 500. And then you get free training exam for the AZ500. If I open that link in a new window, it's all the kind of training content, courses and stuff like that that you can learn for the exam. Really, really good website. Not a lot of people know about that, but there's courses on all the kind of things that get covered in the exam. So if you want to do the 103, I think it might have 103. Yep, so the 103 stuff, you can click on here and it will give you stuff to go and learn. Pretty cool. Yeah, that's not a lot of people know about that website, but yeah, I always tell people to go there. And one other thing I wanted to talk about when we're talking about exams is my resources. So if I click on my GitHub, let me just click on the main thing to begin with. So in here I've got some community places, I've got some articles on DevOps, but the one I wanted to show you for the exams is this exams folder. So in here I've got folders for most of the exams, not all of the exams, but if you want to study the AZ104, this is where I put all my study guides that I've collated. So if you want to go in here, you can go in here and find out about the exams, and I'll be putting links to training courses and a bit more in here. But there's quite a lot of links going on for things like the AZ103. So people have written some blog posts and study guides in here. So I'll definitely have a look at these links. And the last one I was going to show you was just the Microsoft website. Microsoft Learn website. Yes, so if you're interested in roles, so if you are a DevOps person, you can go in here and go DevOps engineer, and it'll filter the information about the kind of exams for that role, which I think is very cool. So you can go and learn about the AZ400 exam, about the certification, and the upcoming new exam for ACP workloads. So you can do it by roles. That's quite interesting. So say you're a data scientist, you can go in here and learn about the data scientist, but also you can learn about the products. So if you have an interest in a certain Azure product, let's say you want to learn about Cosmos DB, it filters the results by Cosmos DB, and then you can go in and find out what exam relates to that kind of thing. So that's Microsoft Learn, but there's also, that's the certification part of the website. There's also these learning paths. So this is where I keep coming back to. So I come in here and there's things about Azure Fundamentals. So if you go into the Azure Fundamentals learning path, it kind of takes you through all these courses, and you kind of learn as you're going. You can start off as beginner and that will tell you about the exam, tell you about the prerequisites, and give you modules in this learning path. So these kind of learning paths have modules that you can kind of go through, and you kind of get points as you're going. And it's kind of like you keep score as you're going, but there's lots of different things in here. So you can do it by product, you can do it by roles, you can do it by levels. So if you're a beginner, you can filter it. You can do intermediate and advanced, and you can also do it by learning path. So if say you're a beginner and you want to do a learning path, you can filter it by that. And there you go. You can filter. You can search for, I don't know, like that. Oh, that's not a good example. Yeah, virtual machines. Yeah, and you can find learning paths about virtual machines. So really, really good website. So the learning path is really good. Now they keep updating these, so keep coming back. A lot of people use this and kind of never come back, but I always come back to Microsoft Learn, especially the certification part, and definitely the learning part. So I think I'm at level 8, but there's something like 17 levels. So there's a lot of content in here, and it's really good for all levels of people. So there's content for beginners, intermediate, and experts. And if I want to go and learn about containers, what I really like about Microsoft Learn is it's kind of bite-sized learning. So you can jump in and find out about something about like Docker. You don't need to do a whole course on learning Docker. You can come in here and find out what is Docker, how does it work, and then find another kind of intermediate course after that. So that's kind of my links for Azure exams. Next, I'm going to show you learning resources that I've come across. Is that the same stuff? Yes, right, okay, so let's go into azureoverview.com. Kind of talked about this earlier on. So if you are interested in something like event hubs, and you don't know what event hubs is, you can kind of come in here and search for things, filter it out, but you can click on event hubs, and it'll tell you some information about when it came out, and you can click on the link and it will take you to the official event hub documentation. So it's quite good to get started on looking at the overview of Azure and what's coming and when. You can see what's generally available and what's public preview. I think this website's a little bit out of date, so I'll crack on and show you my other website, which is much better. I think this one's really, really good. This is AzureCharts.com. So this is a guy who works for Microsoft, and this is just an amazing website. So the kind of things it covers are all of the different offerings, pricing and offerings, what's been retired. You can look at an overview. This is kind of a better overview actually. So this is all the services that Azure provide. You can click on, highlight one of them, and it'll take you to the documentation. I'll tell you how many updates there are, all sorts of things. What else is good about this is there's SLAs. So you can get SLAs for particular services. So if you want to know what the SLA is for Databricks, for example, you can see the SLA is 99.5 and when it was last updated. You can go and see the status for things. So if something's down and you want to figure out why it's down, or is it down, in fact, you can go and go in here and click on it, and it also shows you the number of regions that they're available on, which is pretty nice. Again, you can filter all these kind of things as well. There's regions, so you can see the region scope of what's available where. So you can see like West Europe, and you can go into like what's the North Europe, and the filters that depend on. You can compare that to, let's say, East Asia. You can compare the kind of resources that are available in that region. But one of the really good ones is Solution Explorer. So if you're looking for solutions for, let's say, Azure DevOps, you can click on here and get lots of how do you do Azure DevOps for containers, and I'll take you to links of example architecture and things like that. So you can learn all about kind of that. But there's all sorts of things in here. You can go in and learn about, let's say you wanted to learn Azure policy. It's kind of how you secure DevOps for AKS. So there's lots of really good. This website is really cool. The other thing I like is learning the customer stories. You can go in and find out about customers who have put these services into play and into practice. It's just going to take a wee second to load. I've killed it. So say you want to learn about who's done blockchain, you can go in and find out, read customer stories about companies who have put that into practice and how it saved them money and all that kind of good stuff. The Learning Explorer. Let's see what it has. Let's see if you want to click on Data Factory. I'll take you to links again, same sort of stuff. There's also quiz. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here. I could spend all day talking about Azure charts, but really cool. One thing I did want to show you was the SLA board. So I saw this morning that the Kubernetes SLA has just changed today. So you can go in here and you can get a notice of when that was updated. So that's kind of Azure charts. Pretty cool website written by a guy who works for Microsoft. Yeah, you can go in and kind of track keys and do all sorts of stuff, but definitely have a look at that one. And the next one is Michael Crump has his Azure tips and tricks that I was talking about. So he's got lots of tips and tricks for all sorts of things within Azure. So say you're doing front door, how do you get started with front door? I'll talk about that. There's so many things, so many good articles in here. Things like Key Vault, if you want to secure, like remove Azure secrets committed to GitHub. Articles on here. Now this is all open source as well. So if you have a tip and trick that you like to share with someone, you can go and commit to this as well. You can he's got how to fork the repo and kind of add your code to that. So that's pretty nifty. The Azure DevOps generator. Now I'm going to log in and just show you this because this is one of my favorite resources. So if anyone's doing Azure DevOps and you want to learn about Azure DevOps, this website is really, really cool. So this is me logged in. Now the trick is you go to choose template, and if you want to learn, so what this does is it sets up a whole Azure DevOps area for you, like a whole project. So there's different types of projects here. There's a Java one somewhere. The Java one here. So there's Java Azure Web App with MySQL. So what this will do is it will create the whole project within Azure DevOps. It will create pipelines, build pipelines, release pipelines. It will create boards depending on what kind of Scrum board you want or an Agile board. The code is also in here, so it's got things like commits, code commits, and it basically shows you how to use all of Azure DevOps by example, which is really cool. And the next thing next to that is DevOps Labs. So you can go in and learn about Azure Machine Learning. You can learn about Docker. You can learn about Octopus Deploy, Selenium, and these are all kind of these all spin up inside containers and sandboxes is what I was looking for. Sandboxes, you can go and learn about white source Bolt and stuff like that. So these are all getting updated as well because this is pretty new, I think. So keep your eye on that. And this also links back to Microsoft Learn, just so you can go and learn the DevOps things. This will take you to the Microsoft Learn website based on DevOps. And the last one is Cloud Adoption Framework, which I would recommend everyone should kind of look at and download. You can download the Cloud Adoption Framework PDF, and it will talk about how you go about moving to the cloud from on-prem, for example. You can do a lot more than that, but that's kind of Azure DevOps in a nutshell. Also talked about Azure Friday. So Azure Friday, there's videos quite regularly. I think there's 2 or 3 every Friday, and they're talking to Azure Barry here. They're talking about how you speed up your application. They're kind of short 20-minute videos sometimes with Scott Hansman talking to a guest, just basically introducing Azure topics and kind of talking about them. It's really, really good stuff. So I'm going to show you now some community stuff that myself and a couple of other people have put together. So we've got this thing called the Cloud Family. So basically it's trying to grow the Azure community online all around the world. So people have signed up for the Cloud Family, and it's free to join. It's not a cost or anything like that. And we've kind of got all the people who kind of signed up just to kind of show their faces and show their Twitter accounts. We've got study guides in here as well. So there's some Azure study guides. We have the people who are in this get to show off their projects. So there's things like Ben Coleman has got the RAM template viewer. We have Mithun, who has this really, really cool diagram tool for drawing diagrams in Azure. It's really fantastic. We've got Sam who creates a resource manager template toolkit for Azure DevOps. There's Azure charts. There's lots of good stuff in here. And I've also got useful links. So all of the links that I've kind of showed and talked about are all in here. So people have put extra links in here and put pull requests in and kind of show the Microsoft Learn, the training that's paid, the training that's free, adoption framework. So Slack channels, we've also got a Slack channel that people can join and kind of ask questions and get help and kind of promote their user groups. We've also got blogs, so everyone who comes in and anyone's got a blog, an Azure blog or whatever, doesn't need to be an Azure blog, but we kind of just link in there. So this is all the Azure community blogs. Good place to come and find useful information. We've also got podcasts. So if you've got an Azure podcast, you can put it in here. So the Cloud Skills one by Mike Pfeiffer's in here. Some really good ones in here. Azure Friday, the Azure Late Show, and Control Alt Azure from a couple of guys in Europe. And that's really it. We've got some virtual events. So we've got the Glasgow Azure User Group, some user group events in the UK, but we're looking for people to kind of join the Cloud family and contribute and put these resources in here. The idea being that it's just one place to come and try and find resources rather than kind of hunting for these kind of things. So I think we've got 100 odd people joined, but please join, please sign up. If you're looking for details, just ping me. I can send you the Slack channel and get started from there. It's also, this website is actually on GitHub, so people have contributed to the site. It's actually running on a thing called Hugo. So far we've got 24 contributors. So it's just a static website, but you can create a pull request and we'll merge it in and kind of, so please do have a look at that. And the last one I was going to show you and talk about is just my resources in general. So I have, my talk will go in here, so I'll put my slides in the talks folder. I've already showed you the kind of useful links. Some Azure policies, so if you're kind of keen on Azure policies, so that's things like it stops people creating large Azure images. It's kind of naming conventions for Azure. So if you're interested in Azure policies, you can put some in there. Got some Azure governance, things on tagging, just really good resources that I've came across. So this is kind of what I do. I put all my Azure resources in here. Community, we've kind of just got some links. Probably most of this is actually going to end up on the Cloud Family website, to be honest. So that's that. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, in fact, I think that's just about me. Yeah, that's just about me for kind of showing you all the resources. So let me just quickly switch back to the slides. So does anyone have any questions on any of that I quickly ran through there?
I can say just one. Is the Edge collection shareable too?
Yes. I mean, I didn't actually realise you could do collections until this morning, so I put them all together. So yeah, I'll put them. Yeah, I'll share all of us at the end of the session. Yeah, it's not a problem.
And someone said that the Slack channel link in the Cloud Family page is broken.
Yes, it keeps timing out. I'll need to sort that. Yeah, I'll don't worry. I have a few people. So I put a bit.ly URL to try and shorten the URL. I think it's timing out, so I'll need to fix that. But yeah, I'll sort that out. So please do sign up and ping me on Twitter. So my Twitter handle's at the bottom there. @Gregor_Suttie. So just ping me on there if you want, or LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Gregor Suttie, so just ping me on there and I will sort that out. Apologies about that. And really the only other thing I was going to say is the key takeaways. So the key takeaways for this chat is basically start today. If you're not learning Azure or you want to try and move your career in a good direction, then start learning something like Azure today and set yourself some goals. Definitely have goals. If you don't have goals, and I always set a time limit. So when I'm booking an exam, I'll book it maybe a month down the line, and kind of that's one way of setting focus. You'll certainly start studying and stop watching Netflix and things like that if you've got an exam looming. I kind of learned that quickly. Failures will occur. You will probably fail an exam or two, maybe you won't, but it's always good to kind of talk about failures. A lot of people don't really mention that. You will learn a lot of new skills, which is why I always say do the exam. It will fill in the blanks. And if you're online and you're talking to people and things like the Cloud family, you will get opportunities. So people are always in there on the Slack channel saying, can someone help me with this? Can someone record a video on this? Would someone like to speak at this event? Etc, etc. And last but not least, I would say try and give back to the community, because it's good to pay something back. And I always think it's always good to think of the person coming behind who might read your blog post, even though you think nobody's going to read my blog post. But someone might find that the same problem as you, and then read the solution. So that's and that's really me. There's my contact details if anybody wants to get in touch with me. And that's the end of that.
I can see one more question here.
Mm-hmm.
What's the best place to start if you're totally new to Azure?
So yeah, this was me a couple of years back. So it depends on your background, I guess. So if you're kind of a developer, then, well, let's just screw that back a bit. I would start with the fundamentals. So you want to look at AZ 900. So that's kind of an overview of Azure. So start having a look at that exam. It'll give you links to the kind of training, and there's some AZ 900 links and some of the stuff that I've shown already, especially on the GitHub Azure resources. That'll give you a good foundation to start off with. It'll fill in some kind of blanks, and hopefully you'll kind of pick it up. But feel free. The other thing is feel free to reach out on Twitter. So there's #Azure family and #Cloud family, and there's quite a lot of people follow those hashtags. So if you do have any questions, always feel free to just ask the question. People are always willing to help. But I would say definitely start with the fundamentals exam.
Awesome. I don't think we have any more questions. People are just super happy and super excited, and we're all excited that you shared amazing presentation, and now we learn a lot. We're all gonna go and take all the Azure exams.
Cool.
So thank you so much, Greg.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
We hope to see you again.
Yep.
And for now, I'm gonna pass the word to Bill, so he can talk about future meetups and what's going on with Boston Azure.
Cool.
Hello, folks. Am I audible?
Yep.
Hi, Greg. Pleasure to meet you. I caught much of your talk, and I'm completely embarrassed that I was late for this. I thought it was starting an hour later, so you'd think I'd know better. So welcome back, everybody else, to Boston Azure. It's been a while since we've had a meeting, and you haven't heard from us until very recently. I didn't think you needed to hear from Boston Azure that we noticed that coronavirus is happening and we're doing all the obvious things. So we just stayed quiet rather than bother you. It's been a couple of months. We had meetings in February in both Burlington and Cambridge, and now it's 2 months later. The boot camp is scheduled for the 25th, which is a week from Saturday, if my calendar math is right. And we're not actively participating in that, but there is still an Azure boot camp, the global boot camp. that you can tap into if you're interested. Our next Boston Azure specific event is 2 weeks from tonight, and it's Taub Ali, who has spoken with us before, and Taub will be talking about SQL agent and not secret agent, which would also be a cool talk, but SQL agent, and what you might think is a gap in the Microsoft Azure managed Azure SQL database service, because there is no SQL agent. Rather, he'll explain why it's not a gap and how all the interesting things you can do with SQL agent, there are more Azure cloud native ways of accomplishing the same things. And so I'm looking forward to that. That'll be our second virtual session. Also, you know, again, I feel really bad I was late, so I didn't get to hear how this was set up at the beginning. But so let me just speak for just a minute. This virtual meeting thing, it's new to Veronica and Jason and myself, and we've never done a Boston Azure event that was just purely a virtual one. So we're all learning. And in part, it's an opportunity. There's no travel overhead. There's no painful room reservation process. My goodness, you would be surprised at how painful it can be to get a room at Nerd. There's no pizza to buy, so we don't have to figure out how to fund pizza and so forth, so there are no costs really. And one of the decisions that we took was to, since it's a simpler process, not only for us to organize, but also for anybody who's attending to make it to the event, right? You don't have to travel to Nerd or to the Burlington office. You don't have to figure out how to have dinner, and other kinds of things are simpler. We're leaning on we're going to try this out. We're going to try shorter meetings instead of having, like, one of the things we worked real hard to do was have 2 talks every meeting to make it really worth your while to show up. That was, the most common pattern. We're going to try one talk, one focused, featured talk like we had tonight with Greg, except we'll meet more frequently. So the Taub talk is 2 weeks from tonight, for example, and then we're going to try to get roughly on a 2-week cadence. And virtual meetings is an opportunity. We're also thinking about if we can capture the recording, since it's already digital, and post it to YouTube with speaker permission, and our as long as things don't go wrong, we don't want to promise that we'll be doing this all the time, but it's something that we also want to try. So that's another part of the opportunity. And still another part of the opportunity is a really excellent one, is it would have been essentially impossible for us to have Greg as a speaker in person, because he's in Glasgow, and very late over there right now, I'm sure. Is it 12:30?
Yep.
Yeah. So thank you for sticking with us.
That's the beauty of doing it online.
All good. So this is a fantastic opportunity, and one of the things we're going to be able to do is, fan out our speaker base. So we should be able to pipe through folks who are, have been out of reach essentially in the past, which is fantastic. Well, you'll still hear from local speakers. Taub is a local MVP, and we're excited to have him back. We have a lot of quality speakers locally. We still plan to have them enlighten us, but we'll widen our net for speakers that we can bring in, and we still want to have a sense of community. We don't quite know how to do that yet, honestly. So we have the Slack thing. If you haven't joined the Boston Azure Slack, that might be a good thing to plug into. It's there's a bit.ly link I posted in the Teams chat area, but it's basically bit.ly/Azure all lowercase BA Slack, short for Boston Azure Slack. And you can self-invite there. It just takes a couple of minutes. And there's a Slack channel for today's meeting, which, of course, if I had been here on time, I would have told you all about before the meeting. I don't know if others had the opportunity to do that. But that's one way we're trying to stay, in touch with the community. And if you have feedback for us, we would really love your feedback, because we're, genuinely, we're trying to figure this out too. And we don't want to do this just for us either. It's great if we get feedback and we get ideas from the community, what's working, what's not. In terms of talk format, are we using the right tools? Are we having it at the right times, at the right frequencies, anything? In this world, I don't know, maybe we should have a meeting occasionally at noon, who knows, right? Because the rules are just different, and we got to think, a little bit outside of the constraints that we're accustomed to living with in the in-person meeting world. So that's my offer back to the community. Let's talk on Slack in the general channel. That would probably be a good place about if you have that kind of feedback. If you have feedback or you want to discuss a particular meeting, we're going to at least experiment with creating a channel per meeting so that we have a home base for any particular meeting. And we're trying to balance that with the live event chat stream that we have here. I don't know if they conflict or whatever. We're again, admittedly, we're all new at this and we're trying to figure it out. So with that, let me again thank our speaker from across the pond. Greg, it was really great to catch most of your talk, and thank you for burning the midnight oil to hang out with us. And we're honored to have you as our first virtual speaker in a new era of community here for Boston Azure. So thank you, Greg.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the invite. Very much appreciated, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Hope you guys did too.
Fantastic. So I'll pause there and see if I don't think anybody else has the ability to speak with the way we do the meeting. So Veronica or Jason, if you have anything to add, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll just end the meeting. I guess I'll end the meeting. So thanks, everybody. I look forward to chatting more on Slack. Again, bit.ly/BA Slack, all lowercase. And we'll look forward to talking to you in the future. Everybody stay safe out there and stay sane, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.